So today we're going to be going over the parameters for us to be trimming our study models. So I'm going to be going over the different cuts that we have to be able to come up with a very nice and finished model. We're going to be starting with this is the maxillary here. So we're going to be starting with the base cut. And when we do the base cut, we are going to be we want a total of about 1.5 inches from the bottom, or I should say the top of the base, down to the occlusal plane. In total, we're going to want our study model to be about 2 3/4 to 3 inches total. So that's what that is going to come in. All right, so with our base cut, we're going to be making this base here flat. And I had kind of preemptively marked this line here. So we're not going to be taking off very much of this base because we're working with a little bit shorter base here. And when we're going in to be trimming this, we're basically going to be trimming this to a flat portion here on the platform. So that's going to be the base cut. Our next cut that we're going to be doing is going to be the posterior cut. And this cut is going to come in at about 1/4 of an inch posterior to the maxillary tuberosity. So you can see here is where that is going to be, about 1/4 inch away from that maxillary tuberosity here, and then over on this side as well. So anything from here posterior, we're going to be trimming that off. So next we are going to be doing the buckle cut. Now for the buckle cut, we are going to be taking a ruler and we're going to be measuring 1/4 of an inch from the first molar. So you can see here with my ruler, I'm going to try and align this so you can see that that line that we have previously drawn is about 1/4 inch out from that first molar. We're also going to be doing the same thing from that premolar. So 1/4 of an inch out there. So that's this line here that we've drawn. So our buckle cut is going to be 1/4 out from the surface of the teeth here. For the buckle cut, we are going to be working in relation to the first molar and the first premolar. And so again, we want our lines to be about 1/4 of an inch above that margin. And I went ahead and drew a small dot here and then a small dot at the first premolar here and connected that with a parallel line. So that's going to be our buckle cut. The next cut is going to be the heel cut. So the heel cut is going to be parallel to the mesial distal line angle of of the opposite canine. So mesial-distal, it's going to be parallel here and here. Okay, so again, we're going from that mesial distal part of the canine. That parallel line is going to be the same parallel line here, and you see the little line that's drawn there for that heel cut. The last cut that we're going to do on the maxillary model is going to be the anterior cut. Here, we're basically going to be cutting an angle from the canine all the way to the midline. And again, it's going to be about 1/4 inch from that margin. And again, this is going to be a straight cut here to where we have that nice straight line with a point at the canine and a point at the midline. So when we're trimming, you want to be careful not to trim too much and basically get rid of these points that we have here when we're doing our buckle cut, and then also when we're doing our maxillary cut, because we've already trimmed this model here, so we want to make sure that we're not going to be getting rid of these angles by accidentally trimming them up against the wheel. And we're also going to do that for the same on the heel cuts here. We want to make sure that we don't hit this maxillary model. So for the anterior cut on the mandibular model, it's going to be quite a bit different than the maxillary. We're basically just going to be creating a rounded cut from canine to canine on either side. So from teeth number 22 to number 27, we're going to be creating that rounded cut versus this pointed cut here on the maxillary. When we're trimming our maxillary cut for the mandibular model, we want to make sure that we are 3/8 of an inch from this surface out here when we're making that rounded cut. So we do not want to cut all the way up to those teeth. We want to make sure that we're leaving that 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so you can see here that we went ahead and trimmed that maxillary model to the parameters that we just went over. So for the mandibular model, we're going to go ahead and occlude the maxillary and the mandibular arches. And we have a wax bite here in the middle that was taken so we can make sure that everything is aligned correctly. We want to make sure that we use the wax bite to align everything. That way the cuts are going to match because we're going to use our maxillary model as a guide. So we'll start by occluding the models with your wax bite like we have here. Then we're going to start with the posterior cut, and we are going to trim it to match the posterior cut on the maxillary. So when we're trimming these models, we're going to leave them together like this. So this posterior cut is going to match the posterior cut here on the maxillary model. For our base cut, which is going to be down here, obviously, on this bottom part of the model, we want our total height of the whole model to be about 2 3/4 inches to 3 inches. So again, we have a mark that we preemptively put on here, you can see. So we're only going to be trimming the model just a little bit to flatten out that base. For the buccal, we're going to go ahead and match the maxillary here from that first molar to that first premolar. So our cuts for the mandibular are going to match the maxillary cut here, and that's for the buccal. So here is the finished product of our study models that were trimmed today with the wax bite in between there. So you can see all of the different angles that we talked about. And we when we go to do the finishing and polishing, we can start to fill in some of these voids that you see here, so we can make these study models patient presentation ready. So as far as the importance of these angles here, you can see that when I lay it down, it will actually stay occluded on these surfaces. So that's the importance of those angles, so we can make sure that the model stays occluded.